My dear brothers and sisters, there are moments in life when fear surrounds us, when the storms of uncertainty roar louder than our own heartbeat, and when the night feels longer than the morning. It is in those moments that heaven whispers, "You are not alone." Psalm 91 is not just a chapter in the Bible. It is a covenant of protection, a shield of mercy, and a miracle prayer for every soul who dares to believe. When the psalmist declared, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty," he was not offering a poetic line to comfort the weary. He was unveiling a heavenly reality that transforms the very existence of those who believe. To live under the shadow of the Almighty is to be hidden in a place where the arrows of the enemy cannot reach, where the snares of the wicked are broken before they even form. It is not the shadow of a man or the shelter of human protection, but the covering of the one who stretched out the heavens and laid the foundation of the earth. Imagine walking through the valley of darkness, yet not trembling because above you rests a divine canopy of light. Imagine lying down to rest at night, not fearing tomorrow, because you are wrapped in the arms of the eternal. This is the supernatural protection promised to those who choose to dwell, not merely visit, but dwell in the presence of God. To dwell means to live, to remain, to anchor your soul in His goodness, and never depart. Even when the winds of life are fierce, the shadow of the Almighty is more than a shield. It is intimacy. When you stand close to someone, their shadow covers you, proving your nearness. In the same way, to be under God's shadow is proof that you have drawn near, that you have allowed His presence to be the place where your heart rests. When the storms of life rise, His shadow whispers, "Peace, be still." When enemies around, His shadow declares, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." This shadow is not fleeting or fragile. It is steady, strong, and everlasting. It moves with you, guiding your steps, shielding your path, and comforting your heart. Many search for security in wealth and connections, or in human strength, but true safety is found only in the secret place where the Almighty extends His covering. You are not exposed to chance. You are not at the mercy of fate. You are guarded, embraced, and hidden under His wing. This truth carries power to silence fear. Because when you know where you are by, you also know what cannot touch you. There is a difference between visiting the presence of God occasionally and choosing to make His presence your home. To dwell under His shadow is to abide daily, in prayer, in worship, in surrender. It means carrying His word as the very air you breathe, making Him your first thought at night. When the psalmist speaks of dwelling, he is inviting us to build our lives in the atmosphere of heaven, where the supernatural becomes natural and miracles unfold like morning dew. In that secret place, diseases lose their grip, fear loses its voice, and despair loses its chains. The Almighty does not simply visit you for a moment. He overshadows you, clothing you in His might, so that nothing of the enemy can overpower you. Under His shadow, your weaknesses become strength, your limitations become possibilities, and your brokenness becomes a testimony of restoration. Such is the power of divine protection that surrounds you not only outwardly but also inwardly, shielding your mind from anxiety and your heart from despair. Think of a child running to the arms of a parent during a thunderstorm. Though the thunder roars and lightning flashes, the child feels safe, not because the storm has stopped, but because of the embrace that covers them. That is what it means to be under the shadow of Almighty. The storms may still rage, the winds may still howl, but you are covered by one greater than the storm itself. His shadow is not the absence of trouble. It is the assurance that trouble will not consume you. It is not the promise of an easy road. It is the certainty that you will not walk it alone. The Almighty Himself walks beside you, His shadow stretching over every step you take. Even when you cannot see the full light, you can trust the shadow to remind you that His presence has not departed. This shadow brings a confidence no enemy can shake, because it flows from the eternal throne where power and love are unshakable and where your destiny is firmly secured. When you abide under his shadow, fear loses its ability to dictate your decisions. The economy may shake, yet your foundation will not. Enemies may plot, yet their schemes dissolve into nothing. Night may terrify others, yet you rest without anxiety, for you know who watches over you. In the shadow of the Almighty, angels are commanded concerning you, to guard you in all your ways. In that place, the natural laws of fear and defeat are broken, and the supernatural laws of faith and victory take over. You are not a wanderer left to chance. You are a child hidden in the fortress of the eternal. Every fiery dart aimed at you burns out before it touches you. Every storm sent to break you only strengthens your testimony. To live under his shadow is to walk in an atmosphere of miracles, where the unseen hand of God orchestrates your deliverance before you even cry out. It is not only protection, it is victory in motion, a daily manifestation of heaven's authority on earth. There are countless stories of men and women who have discovered the miracle of this shadow. Some have walked through sickness and found healing where there was no cure. Others have faced battles and found strength where defeat was certain. Still others have lost everything in the world's eyes, but stood unshaken, because the Almighty himself was their refuge. These testimonies are not rare. They are the daily experience of those who choose to abide, to remain, and to trust. Under the shadow of the Almighty, despair becomes hope, loss becomes restoration, and weakness becomes a platform for God's power. You do not need to fear the unknown future, for his shadow covers the days ahead. You do not need to fight every battle alone, for his covering shields you in ways unseen. To live under that shadow is to live in the constant awareness that heaven surrounds you, and the Almighty himself fights for you. This is the miracle of Psalm 91, the divine protection that transforms ordinary lives into extraordinary testimonies of God's faithfulness. There are dangers that we can see and prepare for, and there are dangers that remain hidden in the shadows of life, waiting to strike without warning. Psalm 91 declares that God delivers us not only from visible threats, but from the unseen snares that the enemy sets in secret. These snares are not always physical. They can be emotional traps, spiritual attacks, or sudden calamities that seem to come out of nowhere. But the promise stands firm. Surely he shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. To be delivered is to be rescued from something that you could not escape on your own. The trap was set. The danger was real, but God intervened. He breaks the invisible chains, disarms the unseen enemy, and shields you from dangers you did not even know were near. His protection is not reactive, but proactive, moving ahead of you, clearing paths and dismantling threats before they can touch your life. Hidden dangers often come in the form of subtle lies whispered into the mind, planting seeds of fear, doubt, or hopelessness. These lies are snares designed to trap the soul, to keep you from walking in the freedom of faith. Yet God's deliverance is greater than the craftiness of the enemy. His word pierces through deception like light, breaking into darkness, exposing the snares and showing you the way of escape. Many walk into despair because they do not see the trap until it is too late, but those who abide in the secret place walk with discernment and divine covering. The Spirit of God reveals what eyes cannot see, warns of danger before it arrives, and provides wisdom to choose paths that lead to safety. Even when attacks come suddenly like arrows shot in the night, his promise is that they will not destroy you. This is the miracle of his deliverance. It is not just escape, but protection that anticipates the danger before you even realize it exists. Plagues and pestilences are another form of hidden danger. They sweep through nations unseen, like shadows that bring fear and destruction. History is filled with stories of disease that threaten to wipe out entire communities, yet Psalm 91 stands as a shield for those who believe. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor of the destruction that wastes at noonday. To live in such a time and still carry peace in your heart is not natural, it is supernatural. God's promise is that while thousands may fall around you, the pestilence will not touch your dwelling. This is not denial of reality, but the declaration of a higher reality, the covering of the Almighty that sets a boundary around your life. Fear may run wild in the world, but faith builds a fortress that no plague can penetrate. Your home becomes a sanctuary, your heart a temple, your life a testimony that God is greater than any disease. Deliverance from hidden dangers is also deliverance from spiritual plagues, the kind that infect the soul. Bitterness, jealousy, anger, pride, and despair can spread silently, just as destructive as any physical disease. These unseen infections creep into hearts, breaking relationships, stealing peace, and distorting identity. But under the promise of Psalm 91, God cleanses, restores, and shields the heart from these silent plagues. He replaces bitterness with forgiveness, jealousy with contentment, and despair with hope. The soul that dwells under his wings is constantly renewed, immune to the poison of the enemy's schemes. The hidden plague cannot survive in the presence of God's light. Every time you draw near to him, his presence becomes medicine to your soul, healing the unseen wounds and protecting you from toxins that try to take root in your spirit. In this way, his deliverance is not only about protecting the body, but about safeguarding the heart, the mind, and the soul from hidden corruption. We live in a world where danger can strike suddenly from unseen accidents, unexpected betrayal, or the schemes of those who wish to harm. Yet the believer walks with an unseen guard, for angels are commanded to stand watch over every step. Deliverance is not limited to miraculous escapes, but includes the daily interventions we do not always notice. The accident that didn't happen, the deal that fell through before it destroyed you, the relationship that ended before it crushed your spirit. These are all hidden deliverances. God's hand moves in ways invisible, canceling plans of harm before they ever reach your life. When you stand under his covenant, you live with the assurance that even the hidden dangers that lurk in the shadows cannot bypass the covering of the Almighty. The enemy may plot in secret, but heaven's protection is louder, stronger, and more powerful than any scheme. The beauty of this promise is that it is not conditional on your ability to fight or your wisdom to foresee every threat. It rests entirely on God's faithfulness. Deliverance from hidden dangers and plagues is his work, his shield, his covenant of love. You are called not to strive in fear, but to rest in trust. To walk daily under his covering is to acknowledge that you are not sufficient in yourself, but that he is more than sufficient for you. His deliverance is not only from what you see, but from what you do not see, from what you cannot predict, and from what you cannot overcome alone. It is a deliverance that transforms fear into confidence, despair into hope, and vulnerability into strength. The snares may be set, the pestilence may move in darkness, but the promise of Psalm 91 is unwavering. Surely he shall deliver you. When God declares in Psalm 91, with long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation, it is not a casual statement, it is a divine covenant sealed by his eternal word. Long life is more than the passing of years. It is a life filled with meaning, strength, and divine satisfaction. Many live long, but without peace, without joy, without purpose. Yet the promise here is not only longevity, but a life that fulfills the deepest desires of the soul, a life that ends not in despair, but in the fullness of God's salvation. To be satisfied means to reach a place where your heart is full, your days are purposeful, and your spirit is at rest. This satisfaction cannot be purchased, cannot be earned, cannot be manufactured by human effort. It flows directly from the fountain of God's presence. Each day becomes a gift wrapped in grace. Each year, another chapter of divine faithfulness, and every season a testimony of His unshakable love. The promise of long life is not to drag the weary soul through endless days, but to sustain and renew, to strengthen and to satisfy until the journey of earth gives way to the eternity of heaven. Long life under God's covenant does not mean a life free of struggles, but it does mean a life where struggles cannot defeat you. It is a journey where storms may come, yet they pass, leaving behind a stronger testimony of resilience. It is a life where sickness may try to invade, but healing and restoration are greater. It is a life where the years are not wasted in fear, but invested in faith. To live long in His promise is to see generations blessed, to witness prayers answered, to experience the unfolding of His goodness in ways that only time can reveal. The elderly man who lifts his hands in worship after decades of trials is living proof that God's promise sustains. The mother who sees her children and grandchildren walk in faith carries the satisfaction that only heaven can give. A long life is not measured by breath alone, but by the richness of a life lived in covenant with the Almighty. Every added year is not just survival, but opportunity. A chance to shine brighter, love deeper, and walk closer with the God who has promised to satisfy. The promise of salvation interwoven with long life speaks of a protection that extends beyond the body into the soul. Salvation is not simply the forgiveness of sins, but a complete restoration of the human being, body, mind, and spirit into the fullness of life God intended. To see His salvation is to witness His power to redeem what was broken, to restore what was lost, and to deliver what was bound. It is to know the joy of freedom from guilt, the release from condemnation, and the security of eternal life. While the world fears death, the promise of salvation removes the sting, declaring that even in the final breath, victory belongs to those who trust in the Lord. Salvation is the crown that makes long life meaningful. Without salvation, long life may become a burden. But with salvation, every day becomes a step closer to eternal glory. To know that your life is not ending in emptiness, but in the arms of the Savior, is the highest form of satisfaction the human soul can ever experience. There are those who fear the future, who count their years with anxiety, worrying that time is running out. But under the promise of Psalm 91, time is not your enemy, it is your inheritance. The days stretch before you, not as a countdown to despair, but as a canvas upon which God paints His masterpiece. Each season of life carries its own beauty. In youth there is strength, in maturity there is wisdom, in old age there is legacy. God's promise ensures that every season becomes fruitful, that no chapter is wasted, and that the conclusion of the story is crowned with salvation. Long life is not meant to trap you in fear of aging, but to give you confidence that God will sustain you until His purposes are complete in you. Just as a tree planted by streams of water yields fruit in its season and does not wither, so will the life of one who abides under God's promise. Even in old age, fruitfulness remains, testimony continues, and the satisfaction of God's presence never fades. The promise of long life and salvation is also a declaration against premature endings. There are battles in life that seem determined to cut short destinies. Accidents, sickness, violence, or despair. Yet this promise stands as a divine shield, declaring that your life will not be stolen before its time. Every breath is numbered by God, not by the schemes of the enemy. Every day is ordained, and no power of darkness can subtract what God has already written. These truths empowers the heart to live boldly, not in fear what might come, but in confidence of what God has spoken. Long life is not only about years, but about fulfilled purpose. You will not leave the earth empty, but full of testimonies. You will not depart in regret, but in satisfaction. And at the end of that long and purposeful journey, the door of salvation swings wide, welcoming you into an eternity where life never ends and joy knows no limit. There is a sweetness in knowing that God himself is the one who guarantees this promise. He does not say, I may give long life, but declares, I will satisfy him with long life and show him my salvation. His word is final, his covenant unshakable, his faithfulness unchanging. This is the anchor for every heart that trembles at the uncertainties of tomorrow. When the world shakes, his promise stands. When years advance, his strength remains. When the body weakens, his spirit sustains. And when the earthly journey is complete, his salvation shines brighter than the sun, guiding the soul into eternal rest. This is not mere existence. It is divine fulfillment. It is a journey where every step is covered, every season is meaningful, and every ending is only the beginning of eternal glory. The promise of long life and salvation is not just about length of days, but about the assurance of God's presence in every day, and the eternal satisfaction of his salvation beyond all days. Beloved, as we reflect on the miracle prayer of Psalm 91, we see that this is not simply a chapter of scripture to be read. It is a covenant to be lived. We have walked through the shadow of the Almighty, where divine protection covers every step and every breath. We have seen how God delivers us from hidden dangers and plagues, shielding us from the traps we cannot see and the fears we cannot name. And we have embraced the promise of long life and salvation, where every day becomes a testimony of his goodness, and every season of our journey carries the mark of his eternal faithfulness. The world may shake with uncertainty, but those who dwell in the secret place are unshaken. Fear may roar loudly, but the voice of God's protection is stronger. Plagues may spread, dangers may rise, but under his wings we are secure. And while time may pass and years may add, our destiny is not to fade into emptiness, but to shine brighter until we step into the fullness of salvation. So, my dear brothers and sisters, let your heart be at rest today. Stand firm in faith. Walk in confidence. Live in the assurance that you are not forgotten, not abandoned, and never unprotected. The Almighty himself is your refuge, your fortress, your shield, and your salvation. Thank you for opening your heart to receive this word today. May the peace of God that surpasses all understanding cover you. May his shadow never depart from your life. May you walk in victory, health, and joy. And may his promise of long life and salvation be fulfilled in you and your family. God bless you, and may his face shine upon you always.